Hey everyone, it's Tom here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make one of these lovely ribbed knit beanies using my Made with Love, the Cottony one yarn. Super simple, super beginner friendly, and I'm going to take you through it step by step. So if you're not super good at reading text patterns, a video tutorial helps. So I'm going to take you through it. I'm going to tell you everything that you need, all the stitches that you need to know, and it's going to be fun. And by the end of it, you're going to have one of these lovely little hats. To get going with this project, the things that you're going to need are 2 balls of this Made with Love yarn. I'm going today for Gold Medal and Flaming Amber. You're going to be holding 2 strands together at the same time to kind of create a chunkier effect. I like holding 2 strands together because it creates this like marbling, which I think is fun. We're also going to need 10mm circular needles. Now you can use interchangeable needles so that you can just use the shortest cable that you possibly can, so that way you can knit in the round and it makes it super simple. We're also going to need some scissors. We're going to need a tape measure just to be checking on our tension gauge, and we're going to need a darning needle at the end to be able to sew in all of your ends. But apart from that, you're good to go. Before you get started with your project, I would highly recommend that you do a tension gauge. Now the tension for this project in 1x1 ribbing, that's knit 1, purl 1, is 14 stitches by 11 rows. Now it can be a little bit flexible because it's a hat and it's not going to be the end of the world if it's a little bit big or a little bit small, but that is the tension that I am working at, and I'm going to show you how to measure it. So to measure your tension, remembering that that is 1 stitch, and then another stitch is in behind here, the purl. You can only really see your knit stitches when you just start knitting this. So you're going to go across like that, so you've got your 10 centimeters. The way that I like to do it when I'm working in rib is I count the knit stitches, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then double it, because for every knit stitch there's a purl stitch. So to count those stitches, you see these V's, that's 1 stitch, and then you've got another stitch in behind here, and then this is our 3rd stitch, and then 1 in there, 4, 5, 1 in there, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 stitches by, now we have 10 centimeters here. Okay, now you can see as we're measuring, you see the V's that are lined up next to the measuring tape. That's what we're going to count. So we're going to now count how many rows. So you see where that 10 starts, this is the first V. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So you've got 11 V's in 10 centimeters. So that makes our gauge 14 stitches by 11 rows. So the first thing that we're going to do is cast our stitches on. So we're going to take our yarn out of our little package. I always like to keep these because that way you know what yarn you use for a particular project, and also colors, because sometimes you forget what the color was called and it's just easier to keep them sometimes. So now we're going to find the end, and I'm going to get both of these here. I'm going to be doing this project holding 2 strands of yarn together. So now that they're together, you basically just have to ignore the fact that there's 2 strands of yarn and just think of them as one. To cast on for this project, we are going to do the long tail cast on method. Now that's my preferred way to cast on. You can cast on any way that you are familiar with and any way that you know how, but for me, that's what I'm going to do. So we're going to start with a slip knot and get to casting on 49 stitches. So if you're doing long tail cast on, make sure you do your slip knot with enough yarn on both sides to be able to cast on the correct amount of stitches. If you're still not quite sure how to do a slip knot, all you have to do is click on the screen to go to the tutorial that I've made specifically for creating slip knots. There's lots of different ways to do a slip knot, but the way that I like to do it is thinking about tying a knot, but then not pulling the string all the way through. So it's kind of like a half knot, and then you pull it tight, and there is your slip knot. Another way to do it is like so. You lay it down, you create a little loop, and then you fold the loop over the yarn that is attached to the ball, like so, and it creates like a little pretzel shape with like a little string in the middle. What we're going to do is you're going to then pick up that middle bit and pull tight, and that is your first stitch and your slip knot on your needle. The next step of the process is casting on 49 stitches. So to do that, we're going to use the long tail cast on, but you can use any cast on method you like. So for me, I used my thumb to create a loop, I put that on, and then once I've done that, I then use my needle to be able to bring the yarn that's attached to the ball through to the front. And that's your second stitch. I'm going to show you again. So you're going to use your thumb, and you're going to pick it up to create a loop. You're going to put your needle through the loop, and then the other piece of yarn, you're going to take your needle under it and pull it through the loop you just made. And again, drop it onto your needle. So again, you created the loop, go through that, and then pull it through. So thumb, create a loop, goes in, and then you're going to pull that other piece of yarn through to the front. Now the other ways that you can cast on is just using the thumb method, where you literally just go like this, create a loop and drop it on. That is also a perfectly acceptable way to do your cast on. It just doesn't hold as much structure. So I prefer to do the long tail cast on, which is through there and then pull the yarn through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need to do 49 of those. So if you keep count, then that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 49. And if you are unsure about how to cast on, there is a tutorial that I have made separately for that, for the most basic way to cast on. 47, 48, 49. There we go. And to secure it, I like to do a little knot here, just in order for it to not get loose when you start doing those first stitches. So I just tie a little knot, pull it tight, and there we have our 49 stitches cast on to our needle. Now to join this hat in the round, what we're going to do is take that first stitch that we cast on and use your right needle to slip it onto, from your left needle onto your right needle. No knitting required. Then you're going to take the stitch, your last stitch that you cast on, this one, you're going to go underneath it, pick it up and pull it over the stitch that you just slipped. And then you're going to take that over like that, so you're almost casting it off. So now you actually have 48 stitches, but the difference is you are now connected in the round and ready to knit your hat. So in order to remember where the start of your round is, you can use stitch markers, but what I like to do is just use some scrap yarn, create a little loop and just, you know, tie knots and make it, it can be as big or as loose as you like, but just so you know where the start of the round is, like so, it makes it super clear when you're knitting, just to know when you start the next round. So to start this round, what we're going to do is knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, all the way around, and you're going to do 48 stitches, and then you'll get back to this stitch here, which is the end of the row, which will be a purl stitch. So we're going to get going with showing you how to do that. Remember, don't use your tail. The tail is not attached to the ball, so don't start knitting with that. Make sure it's out of the way. So we hold the yarn that is attached to the ball. And to do a knit stitch, what we're going to do is take your right needle to the left of that first stitch. Then we're going to go through the stitch from left to right, front to back, like so. So you're kind of stabbing the stitch. Then we're going to take the yarn that's attached to the ball, wrap it round, pull that yarn through to the front, and then drop that stitch off the needle. And that is a knit stitch. I'll show you again in a minute, but if you don't know how to do a knit stitch, I have a tutorial on the screen right now for you to go and check it out. The next stitch we're going to do is a purl stitch. So you bring the yarn from the back into the front of your work. Then we're going to take your right needle and go through the stitch from left to right, from the back to the front. So you're coming in front of the stitch like this. Then you're going to wrap that yarn around, and then you're going to take the bit that you've just wrapped around and pull it back through the stitch and drop it off your needle. That is your purl stitch. So now we're going to alternate between those stitches all the way to the end of the round. So we're going to go back to knit stitch. So knit stitch means yarn at the back, through the stitch, wrap your yarn around, pull the yarn you wrapped around to the front and drop it off your needle. Now we're going for a purl stitch. So we're going to take the yarn from the back to the front of your work, and then we're going to go right needle through the stitch from the back to the front. Then you're going to wrap your yarn around, and then you're going to pull that yarn through and off. So now we're going to knit stitch again. So yarn is at the back, and then we're going to go through the stitch, wrap it round, pull it to the front, and then drop it off the needle. Then for a purl stitch, we're going to bring the yarn to the front again. We're going to go through the stitch, wrap the yarn around, then back and drop it off. If you don't know how to do a purl stitch, I have a tutorial on the screen for that now. Now we're going to just keep alternating between knit stitch and purl stitch all the way to the end of the round. And you will have 48 stitches in total. The first round is always the most difficult because it's the one where you're getting used to it, you're getting used to the tension, and then once you've got that first round going, you're on your way and you'll have the hat in no time. As you can see, we are coming towards the end of the round, like so. This is the last stitch that we're going to purl, and then we see our stitch marker, which we're going to just slip over to the other needle. We don't need to knit the stitch marker, that's just to remind us where we're at. Then we're going to repeat all the way around exactly the same thing, and the difference here is you can read your stitches. Reading your stitches is one of the most valuable lessons you can in knitting. You can really see the difference between a knit stitch and a purl stitch, because a knit stitch is a V, like you see here, and a purl stitch is a bar. So you know that you have to do a knit stitch on top of the V's and a purl stitch on top of the bars. So if you ever get confused and can't remember whether you just knit or purled, just look at the stitch. If it's a V, we're going to knit, so the yarn at the back. And if we see the bar, we're going to bring the yarn to the front and then purl stitch. And now we're going to continue doing these rounds of knitting and purling on top of the knit stitches and top of the purl stitches all the way around for 30 rounds. And I will teach you how to count your rounds once I have a few more rounds on my needles. I've been working some rounds now. I'm not quite at 30, but I want to be able to show you how to count your rows so you know exactly when we're going to start the decreasing. Now, to count our rows, it's exactly like we did with the tension gauge. So you're going to start down here, see this V? We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So currently I've done 18 rounds. So I have 12 more to go, and then we're going to start decreasing to form the top of the hat. So now that I've done my certain amount of rows straight, I'm only going to be doing 20 rows so far because I'm making this hat for Robbie. But for an adult, you want to do at least 30 to 35 rows. And if you've got a really big head, go to 35, 40 rows, but you can kind of customize it in that way. Then we're going to shape the top of the hat, which is going to create the bit that kind of makes it go boop. That's the technical term, by the way. So to do that, we have to do some double decreasing in rib stitch, which is slightly complicated. So if you're a beginner and you want to skip over that part, just do an extra 4 rows and then join me when we start doing the drawstring. Now we're going to start the decreases to shape the crown of the head. Each round is going to be slightly different. There's going to be 4 rounds of decreasing, and the amount of stitches between each decrease is going to be smaller and smaller each round because we're going to have less stitches. Because we're going to be decreasing by 8 stitches, this is the way that I found it to be easier. So we're going to work the first 4 stitches as normal. So knit, that's 1 stitch, purl, that's 2 stitch, knit, that's 1 stitch, purl, that's our 4th stitch. Okay, so we've done our first 4 stitches of the round. Now we're going to do a double decrease. To do a double decrease in the rib pattern, it does change depending on, this is where it's really important to be able to read your stitches. But I'm going to tell you how it's going to land so you don't have to read the stitches, but if you're doing your own project, you might have to. So, first thing we're going to do is slip 2 stitches. So we're going to slip, don't knit them, just transfer them from one needle to the other, like so. Then we're going to read the stitch that's next, and that is a knit stitch. So we're going to knit it, like so. And then the 2 stitches that you just slipped onto your needle, we're going to take, so that's on this side, that's this stitch and this stitch. We're going to take those stitches, like so, and then pass them over the stitch that you just transferred onto the needle and cast them off. And you have just decreased by 2 stitches there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to purl again, as you would in continuing the round. Knit, purl, knit, and purl. So that now is 10 stitches that we've worked, because it was going to be 12, but we've decreased by 2. So now we're going to repeat exactly the same thing, starting from the beginning. If you do have the written pattern, where there'll be a link in the description, you'll be able to follow this a lot easier. So, and it'll also be on screen, but the repeat is knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. Then we're going to slip, slip, knit, pass over. Then we're going to purl, knit, purl, and that is the repeat for this round. So we'll go again with a knit. So work 4 stitches, essentially. Purl, knit, purl. And now we're going to decrease again. So to decrease, double decrease in rib, we're going to slip the first 2 stitches. So slip and slip. Then we're going to read this stitch, and it's a knit, so we are going to knit it. Then we're going to pass the 2 stitches that we slipped over and off the needle over the stitch that you just knit, and we've just decreased by 2. So now we're going to work the next 5 stitches as normal. So again, we can read our stitches. That's a purl. So we're going to purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. So that was our 10 stitch repeat. So now we're going to go back and do exactly the same thing again, and you're going to do it 4 times in total, because we're going to end up with 40 stitches. Knit, so work 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to decrease again, slip, slip, knit, pass those 2 stitches that we just slipped over the stitch that we knit, and then we're going to purl and continue the round as normal. Knit, purl, knit. So you can see here, this is where we did our double decrease, and then we work 5 more stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we do the repeat 1 more time. So knit, purl, knit, purl, and now we're going to work that double decrease again. So slip, slip, knit, and then pass those 2 stitches that we just slipped over the stitch that we knit, and then work your final 5 stitches of the round. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there we have it. That is that first round of decreases, where we've gone from 48 stitches to 40. So now we're going to decrease again by a further 8 stitches on top of where our decreases were. I'm going to just tell you the exact numbers so you don't have to read the stitches, but I'm going to show you by reading the stitches how it can make it easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to work 3 stitches for this next round. So we've got a knit, purl, and knit. The aim of when to slip and start decreasing is, you can see this is where we did the double decrease on the round before. So we're going to stop 1 stitch before that, and then we're going to slip, slip, and then you can read this stitch and see that this time it's a purl. So we're going to bring the yarn to the front, and then we're going to purl that stitch like you would any other time, and then the 2 stitches that you slipped, you're going to then pass over that stitch that you purled. And then we're going to work 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is our 8 stitch repeat that we're going to do all the way around. And again, you can look for where the double decrease was the round prior to see where you need to stop. So here is the double decrease. So we're going to stop one stitch before, so you can see we have 1, 2, 3 more stitches that we need to work. So 1, 2, 3. And there you can see this is where the double decrease was. So we're going to do the same again. Slip, slip, bring the yarn to the front because we're going to purl. Then we're going to bring it back to the back and pass those 2 slip stitches over the stitch. And then we're going to continue. So for the repeat, there's another 4 stitches, but as you can see where we're going to stop. This is double decrease, so this is where we're going to stop. So you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more stitches that we need to work. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So now we're at where the double decrease is. So we're going to slip, slip, purl, pass those 2 stitches over the stitch that you just worked, and then we're good to go again until the next double decrease. I think by now you might have got the hang of where we're going with this. So you can see here, I've stopped now again because I can see the double decrease under here. So then we're going to slip, slip. You can see the purl, so we're going to purl that one. And then we're going to pass those stitches over and off. And then we're going to finish it to the end of this round. So now you can start to see it come together. This is actually the wrong side of the hat, so it will be turned the right way out, so you won't see. So on here, you can see how it's kind of decreased really neatly, whereas if you flip it around the other side, it's the reverse. So you know which side is the right side and which side is the wrong side. So now we're going to keep doing that. We're going to do 2 more rounds of decreases. So as we've learned, this is where the decrease is going to happen. So this time round, we're going to work 2 stitches, knit, purl, and then we're going to see that this is where we decreased before. So we're going to slip, slip. Then this time round, it's a knit. So we're going to knit, and then we're going to pass those 2 stitches that we slipped onto over the stitch that we just worked. There we go. And then we're going to follow the same thing. If you want to just follow the repeat, it's another 3 stitches, purl, knit, purl, and that is our 6 stitch repeat. But as you can see where that double decrease is. For me, that's pretty obvious that you can see that it's come over and it's a little bit clunkier here. So you know that's where you have to work to 1 stitch before the clunky bit, like so. And now you can see that there, so we're going to slip, slip, it's a knit because we can see the V's, so we're going to knit, and then we're going to pass these 2 stitches over what we just worked. Now we're going to keep going now until the next set of decreases. Knit, purl, knit, purl. And then we can see here again, this is where we double decreased. So we're going to slip the stitch before it, the stitch that was double decreased, and then this time it's a knit. So we're going to knit, and then we're going to pass the 2 stitches over the stitch that we knit. And now we're going to go purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and then you can see the double decrease again. So for the final time of this round, we're going to slip, slip, knit, pass over, and then we're just going to finish working those stitches till the end of the round. So now we're on our last round of decreases. You should have 24 stitches, and we're going to reduce down now into 16. So we're going to reduce by a further 8 stitches. So you're going to knit, and then the next stitch that we have, you can see here, that's the stitch before the double decrease. So we're going to slip, slip, and then this time it's a purl. So we're going to purl, And then again, we're going to work those stitches, knit, purl, and then we're going to repeat that again. So knit, you can see the double decrease here. So the stitch before the double decrease, slip, and then slip the one with the double decrease. Read the stitch, it's a purl. So we're going to purl that stitch, and then we're going to carry on until the next double decrease. And this is really teaching you how to read the stitches, because once you can read the stitches, it really does make it a lot easier. So now we're going to purl, and then slip those 2 stitches over. If you're following along this tutorial with the written instructions, it will make it easier to follow what the repeats are. Okay, 1 stitch before. Oh. We're going to slip, slip, purl, and then slide those 2 stitches over, then knit and purl. So that is all of the decreases necessary for your project, and now we're going to cast it off and close up the gap to make it look like an actual hat. So now we've done all the decreasing for this hat, we just now need to close it up. Now if you didn't do the decreases and you just did the extra rows, that's totally fine. You're now going to catch up with me, and the steps are exactly the same. So with this, you're going to need your darning needle, because we're going to use that to draw it all up and pull it together so it creates the top of the hat that is all neat and tidy. So now we have our darning needle and our scissors handy. What we're going to do is your working yarn, you're going to leave a really quite long tail, okay? And then we're going to cut it with the long tail, like so. Just snip. It's always really daunting when you cut your project at the end, but don't worry, it's meant to be. So now we're going to thread that end onto our darning needle. There we go, like so. And now you can see where your stitches are on your needle, right? And it's all going round in a circle. So with your tail yarn here, the needle, we're going to take off the stitches and lay them onto this, and then we're going to drawstring it together. So you're going to take your needle and you're just going to go through the stitch and take it off all the way around. As simple as that. There's no casting off like in traditional knitting for this project. We're just going to keep going round, slipping it off, and it'll fall onto that piece of yarn that we've just done. So you're continuing to follow the way that the stitches are going around your needle, and you're just going to take them off, off, off. And this works whether you've done the decreases or not, because you'll see what happens once I take it all off. It's quite satisfying actually when you see it all come together. So this has all been taken off like so, right? And now the fun part, but don't do it too hard because you don't want the yarn to rip, but you see that hole there? So now what we're going to do is take the tail of the yarn and we're going to just pull it, and it's going to close it all up nice and neat and tidy like that. And you can see where we've done the decreases, how it's kind of shaped the top of that hat. But you don't need to have done the decreases, it just gives it a little bit of extra shaping. So now that we've tied that and it's closed, what I like to do is go back and forth a little bit through those top stitches just to secure it. So you're going to go back and forth a few times across, you know, there's no particular science to this, it's just securing it so that it doesn't come undone. So we'll go in and out like so a few times, back and forth through that gap just to kind of really secure it in. And then once we feel it's pretty secure, I like to do a little bit of a knot just to keep it extra secure and tight. So there we go, we'll pull it tight like so. So then your hat is essentially completed. So what we're going to then do is, you can see which way's the right side, like so. So now, let me get this all flat. There we go. So you can see that this is a slightly neater side to have your work on, because you can see the way that it's following those lines to decrease. So now, what you need to do is weave in your ends, so to disguise them. the way that I like to weave in my ends is following along one of the stitches like so, where you just weave in and out of them. So in and out. There are lots of different ways to do it. This is slightly a cheats way, I guess, but I like to weave in and out to trace the line of those stitches, and then not just down, but I then go back up the other side like so, and just weave it in to hide it. And it's this way the knots that you just created won't come undone because they're secured by all of this stuff. So then you pull that like so. You can stretch it out so it's like slightly less obvious as well. And then what we're going to do, and you do it on the side that's inside that isn't going to be showing outside anyway. So then you snip it. So that's all that done. Then you're going to take the tail of the very first part where you cast on, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to hide those ends. So get both of those tails through. You'd think I'd be better at this by now, but I'm still not very good at threading a needle. I've got sausage fingers, which is why. Okay, so the needle is thread. Now we're just going to, and sometimes if you want to make it slightly tighter here, you can go around one side, and then all you're going to do is again just follow the stitch all the way up like so, up like say like 6, 7, maybe 8, however you feel, and then you're going to go back down the other side again. So we're going to go through those stitches. There's no real art to it, it's just hiding it in a way. And then once you pull that through there, again stretch it out a little bit, and then we're going to snip that, snip, and then we have our lovely little ribbed hat. You can wear it like this, or you can turn it up, and it's got, this is again for Robbie. You can stretch it out a little bit, you can block it and get it wet, wash it, whatever you need to do. And there we have it. This is the finished knit rib beanie. This is the 20 row style. So as you can see, it's slightly smaller than what the adult one would be, like this, which is 35 rows this one was. So you can adjust it to however you like. It could be 35 rows, it could be 20 rows, perfect for a little kid. It's probably gonna fit Phoenix perfectly. So the more rows you do, the bigger the hat's gonna be. So I hope you enjoyed that, and let me know what you want me to make next and teach you how to make. I definitely wanna do a jumper. That's definitely on the cards, but let me know, and I can't wait for you to tag me in your photos of you making them, because I wanna see you in your very own Made with Love beanie.